Welcome to this episode of Our Quest. This is Dimple Mehta, and today we will talk about playing it to your strength. This entire discussion is about how to do your things better when you're aware of what your strengths or weaknesses are, and how to utilize your strengths or weaknesses in pursuit of your goals. So let me begin with thanking you for taking out the time to listen to these podcasts. And I hope this episode further contributes towards each of your growth. If you like the episode, give us a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts. That helps the episode to organically reach more people who might find it useful or beneficial. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the show so that you don't have to miss out on any episode. Joining us today for this beautiful discussion is an extraordinary architect and the co-director at Freeline Engineering Consultants, Dubai, UAE, second generation. Gracing us with her presence today is Ankita Rao. Welcome to the show, Ankita.
Thank you, Dimple. Thank you for having me.
How do you feel about it?
It's very exciting. It's my first podcast, and I'm very excited to be here. And I love your topic. I love the thought that you have in mind. I'm very excited.
So good to know. I'm equally excited to do it with you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So diving straight into the first question that I have in mind. So before we dig deep into it, let's first understand and establish what strengths and weaknesses mean when we are referring to it. So what do we understand from people's strengths and weakness?
I think there are two very different aspects here. One is the aspect that people show, and then there is an aspect that people don't show. So, from the aspect that people show, when you talk about strength, I feel that comes, there's a part of it, of course, that you inherit when you're growing up. You see strong people around you. You have your parents, you have your grandparents, your mentors, your teachers. There's a certain level of an acquired strength that one would imbibe. But I feel a big part of strength also comes from some level of resilience. When you have incidents, we all go through so many various different things in life, right? I think there's a lot of strength that one derives from bouncing back from situations, and that is admirable. And it's the same thing about weakness as well, because I feel like how you need light to appreciate darkness, or you need darkness to appreciate light, whichever way you look at the situation. I feel it's the same with weaknesses. And I guess weaknesses are not necessarily a bad thing, as long as they're not harming you in any way, or they're not abusive on any level to your own personal self or to others. I feel weaknesses can potentially be very, very strong, and can be a strength, a hidden strength in itself. Because and this I'm talking about what you're showing and what you're exhibiting. So to me personally, when people are vulnerable and they exhibit some level of weakness, or sometimes vulnerability is also seen as a weakness, I personally admire that a lot, because being vulnerable means you have nothing to hide. And to me, I really appreciate a quality like that.
So beautifully said that weaknesses can also act as your strength, and that's why we are here discussing playing it to your strength, which does not necessarily limit to just your actual strengths, but can also be about how well you use your weakness as your strength. Each of us can have billions of strength and millions of weaknesses, but sometimes we ourselves are not aware what's our strength and what's our weakness. Sometimes we are actually putting a foot forward which is not our best foot. How to identify what's our strength and what's our weakness?
I think it's like if there was a lot of music playing, right? How do you identify what are the different notes? It's about creating a sense of awareness. So to me personally, I've personally been into meditation and just keeping awareness and being mindful. This is a practice that chose me, I feel, at a very early age in my life, when I was about 14, 15. And knowing unknowingly, I started adapting myself that way. I started keeping a lot more awareness
Just as a kid.
just as a child. Yeah. And it just knowing at that point, it was very fascinating, this knowledge of spirituality or whatever was coming to me. I personally feel these are things that choose you.
I agree.
So this knowledge, the spiritual teachers or whoever crossed my path chose me very early in life, and this was a life that I was leading in parallel to my academics or to my career, and to my personal life, but it's a very enriching part of my life. And I feel the best way to know anything is to just sit quietly, to be honest. When we have so many thoughts and we have to sit and collect thoughts, the first thing that we all do as an instinct is to just sit quietly and collect your thoughts and then sort them out. But if you think about amplifying this 100 times, vis-a-vis meditation, it's just, the potential is just phenomenal. You may just discover things about yourself that you didn't even know existed. You may get answers to situation that you may not know you had. You may get some level of validation that you're seeking, and you didn't know you were seeking that validation. And you may possibly heal from something that you didn't know you required healing from. It's actually pretty phenomenal. A lot of people are very skeptical about meditation. I don't speak out too much about it, because a lot of times when I tell people, the first reaction I get is, "Oh, but I get a lot of thoughts." And my answer to them always is, yeah, this is like telling me I'm not going to the gym because I don't already have a one pack. How am I going to build the other packs, right? It's always a work in progress. But even if we remove this whole so-called perception or preconceived notions about meditation, just this whole practice of just sitting quietly, if we all practice just sitting by ourselves, being a little aware about our situation, what we're doing, just for like 5 to 10 minutes every day, and that itself is a phenomenal progress towards realizing anything. It's not just about identifying your own strengths or weaknesses, but it is a pathway towards anything, I feel. So, and strengths and weaknesses are still internal, so the only way to assess them is for you to internalize and look inwards towards what towards what you're seeking. But you may just be surprised, you may just find so many things that you didn't know you needed, but you found them, and that is such a liberating and a beautiful feeling.
It's so beautifully said, Ankita, and brilliantly pointed out, because normally people get confused that maybe I need to take personality assessment to know myself better. Maybe I need to go to a lot of consultants and seek their validation about me. Maybe I need to take advices from people outside. Yes, that helps. Not denying that it wouldn't help. But going inside you, taking time, taking a step back and observing yourself and analyzing yourself and meditating, if you can put the effort to meditate, will give you the kind of analysis and the kind of observation which probably no external person could, because every external person can only explain based on what you're showing to them. But when you're meditating, you are seeing what you're probably not showing to even anybody.
That's such a brilliant point, because even with meditation or with any sort of awareness that you're keeping or any sort of mindfulness that you're practicing, right, that's also a process to be able to start it. Because if you are clouded with so many emotions, so many thoughts, so much of anxiety or any sort of negative emotions, or you require healing, it's not possible for you to sit and internalize these things. So like you mentioned, taking external help, whatever it takes to get you to move forward, is very important. And there is a lot of a phenomenal amount of strength that is required when for you to tell yourself, I need help. Because that itself is such an empowering situation, because you have taken a decision to transform your life, and no one else has done that for you, and you have taken that call that my happiness or my state of mind or my peace of mind is paramount. And I feel that step alone is phenomenal. And I think everyone who's even slightly feeling that they're stuck in a situation, we all go through so many situations, professionally, personally, where we feel stuck, where we feel helpless. And I feel at the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own happiness and for our own well-being. I think everybody should do whatever it takes for them to move past these situations. Taking that action is very, very crucial and paramount. It's not about the outcome, but just taking that initiative towards any sort of self improvement, whether it's even reading a book. Sometimes you may just read a quote on Instagram that may just click somewhere and release some emotions for you, or you may just resonate with it so strongly, and that is a healing in itself, right? So it's every drop makes up the ocean. So when you start piling those drops in for yourself, you are phenomenally growing. And to be able to take that first step, like I said, is a step of immense courage. It's not for everybody to do, and the ones who can do it, I feel should do it. And it, like I said, it's a great step forward towards your own self improvement.
And that's a victory itself when you've taken the first step.
We attach a lot of expectations to outcomes, right? As human beings, we attach a lot of expectations. We expect things and we create attachments towards those expectations, which is very toxic. But as human beings, we're all flawed. We're all conditioned in a certain way, and we do that anyway. But if, like I said, if we can keep a little bit of awareness towards these small things, a lot of our life would be so much more simpler. I read this very interesting quote the other day which said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And it's so true. If you just think about it, we keep imagining outcomes and worrying about it when the chances of that happening are actually 50%. But there is a 50% chance that it may go in your favor. But as human beings, we don't focus on those things, right? So we create a lot of this anxiety and this worry and this tension for ourselves on so many levels, which are not required. And the basis of this is on many occasions baseless, because it's based out of some imaginative figment of somebody's imagination or your own imagination.
What you're sharing right now is profound. It's profound. So beautifully highlighted that sometimes we ourselves just don't know what it is inside us or who we actually are. And sometimes we just feel that people who are strong, who are around us, or people who are weak, who are around us, maybe they're just born that way. There are some people who feel that they're born that way, or they've learned to be so. So what do you think? Is strength something that you're born with, or can it be something that you can acquire?
I feel it's a combination of both. I think when children are born, you see them as a mold of clay that they
Yeah.
can be molded on
Yeah.
so many levels. And but of course there is a certain level of if we talk about in a more profound way in terms of the soul, or I personally believe all of us have a soul. So I always believe that the soul has a certain quality, and there's a certain amount of energy or strength that we are all born with or acquired with. But then again, this is my personal belief.
Yeah.
Having said that, so I'll share a small incident, of mine. So as a child, I had a lot of health issues. So I would not be into sports. I was not into fitness, and I was obese from a very young age because the medication made me obese. So by the time I grew up, I hit puberty. I had a lot more health issues. They just compounded. But in my head, because I was that size all my life, I was big. I didn't know that there was no insecurity that came out of that size, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know a smaller size. I didn't know that there is some level of esteem associated with that size. To me, my esteem was associated with being big, and I loved it. And to
You were
me,
comfortable in
I
your
was
skin.
very
Yeah.
comfortable, and I never had any instances of being bullied or anything of that sort. So to me, the world was full of different colors, different body types, and I was just another body type, and I loved it. This was when through my academic career. Then when I was in university, the same thing happened. And along the way, many instances happened, a lot of personal setbacks, etc., which made me pile on a lot of weight. So when I was about I would say about as recent as 7-8 years ago, I was 130 kilos close
Wow.
to, and I just ended up piling on this weight, knowing unknowingly, and it was just creating so many health issues for me. And in my head, I had just accepted that I am a big girl, and I am going to always remain that way. uh, and I never thought that I would be somebody into fitness, or I would be someone that can stick to any sort of fitness goal long term, because prior to that I had always started and not been able to follow through on programs. And I love my food too much, and I love the wrong kind of foods. It's not about eating the right food, right?
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, you just saw I ate 2 of your Lotus biscuits. So I have a very, very strong sweet tooth. So sweets I love, and I love the wrong kinds of foods. So, but to be able to build that kind of discipline where you don't feel, that that you're compromising too much and you're being a victim. So that process actually took me a very long time. So in the last 7 years I've lost close to 60 kilos. So I'm
Which is
literally-
as much as a person.
exactly. So I'm half my size almost right now. But that process was just so phenomenal because I had to find a lot of answers. I had to find a lot of strength, so to say. And I had to implement an approach that was very holistic. That was the only way this was going to work. So even discipline in terms of, and it takes a lot of courage to be able to even stick to a discipline. And you have to, at the rudimentary level or at a grassroots level, question why you're doing what you're doing, right? With anything, as with anything. But when you want to achieve something, and I feel this question is so important, you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. Are you losing weight only because you want another boyfriend? Are you losing weight because people are taunting you? Or you genuinely want to look good? You genuinely want to improve your health?
Or be healthy.
Or
yes.
just be healthy, or you're genuinely doing it for yourself. And if there is something that you're not doing for yourself, it's not going to be sustainable at all. So again, it comes down to a lot of awareness, where you have to be aware of why you're doing what you're doing and use a very holistic approach to things, including any sort of situation. Now, when we talk about strength, in what situations do you need strength, right? You need in most cases you need them when you have a setback. In most cases you need them when you have pitfalls, or any sort of upsetting situations.
When challenges are thrown
or
your way.
challenges are thrown your way. So these are situations where you need to find strength in inwards, or be able to cope with them, or find those situations. And I always feel they come. I have a childhood friend who lost her husband recently to COVID. And I'm stunned at how incredibly beautifully she's managed her life. Her husband was 38. She has 2 young children. One would look at her and feel helpless for her, but the way she has bounced back, she has picked up her life with a lot of dignity. And I was having a word with her the other day, and she told me the same thing. She said, I don't even know where the strength is coming from. I don't know where the support system is coming from. She's like, yeah, there's a lot of support system around me, but I have to pick up my life and move on. And it's incredible how beautifully and how in such a dignified way she's moving on with her 2 young children. So I think, in a lot of situations, if you genuinely want to find strength, you genuinely want to move on, I feel help always comes, whether it's internal, external. It may be in the form of a book, and like I said, it may be in the form of an Instagram post that sets you free, from some level of tension or anxiety, or gives you some answers at the end of the day. But I feel having that intention to help yourself is paramount, and help always comes. I truly believe that.
I would just like to simplify it for the listeners, because what you've just shared is so in depth, and it's actually quite a lot of meaningful insight that you've shared. So there are layers to what you've just said. So, for example, you've lost weight. Okay, you were probably very big and you've lost weight. One person could just stop at seeing, okay, great, she used to be fat and now she's not. That's the first
what's
layer.
the big deal?
Yeah, that's the first layer. Another person could go to the second layer. Okay, that means she can work out for herself, and that means she can diet. Good for her. That's the second layer. There's a third layer. Another person could observe that she has something inside and she has a goal, and that's why she worked towards it. Another layer could further come beyond that probably she's better aligned or she's got better clarity. Another layer can come to that she's got a lot of strength to push herself and achieve whatever she. So what I mean to say is that outcome is not just that outcome.
No, it's not. And there are so many things that go into it, right? It's not just, and this is something I realized in this last 6-7 years, because prior to this, I had been through many, many unsuccessful attempts at losing weight, and then again piling it back on. And it just came to a point where I realized if I don't do it right now, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, because at that point I was 30, 31, and I said, if I don't do it at this age, it's never, I'm just going to remain ridden with health issues all my life, and it's just going to get worse. So it was just a situation where I felt very, very pushed against the wall. And then of course there were a lot more other smaller desires. I wanted to wear certain kind of clothes. I wanted to be able to fit into clothes that are available on the racks, because I was a size 28 or so, which were I had to specially customize and make clothes for myself. So these are small desires that I felt I was killing, and at the age that I was, I felt that I deserved better. So yeah, but like I said, it takes a holistic approach, like you just beautifully mentioned. It's not just about the diet, it's not just about the sleep, it's about how well you take care of yourself. It's also about detoxing emotions, it's about detoxing your mind, it's about not just about what you put in and what you're exerting out in terms on a physical level, right? It's what sort of books are you reading, what sort of people are you keeping in your life, what sort of thoughts are you entertaining, and how is your discipline in terms of your sleep, how is your discipline in terms of small things like drinking water. How disciplined are you with keeping track? If somebody's telling me eat 5 meals a day, and if there is some reason I'm not able to eat it, why is it that I'm not able to eat it? There's almost always an underlying emotional reason why you don't want to take care of yourself on a subconscious level. Why is it that you don't want to push yourself? And identifying that block is so important, because it may be a very very simple answer. It may be a very simple answer wherein you may track it down to something that some random person has told you in your childhood, and you're subconsciously holding on to that block. It may just be as simple as that, but we have to be open to accept that there are simple answers, and this sort of a process is not complicated. It's actually very simple. If we just resign to that idea, I think there's so much more that we all can achieve, and there's so much growth that humanity as a whole can achieve.
For the listeners, if you could see Ankita speak right now, you would be liberated just by watching her speak with the energy. And I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I wish I could show it. Now that we are aware of our strengths and weaknesses, how can we play to our strengths? How can we benefit from playing it to our strength?
I think playing to your strengths is like arsenal that you possess when you go into war. Depending on the situation, you know which weapon you need to use to defend yourself. So the reason I'm using a war analogy is, for most of us who are at work, who are in business, who are maybe we're facing some challenges in our own personal lives. We always do, right? Even whether it is at home front or at work front, there's always going to be something that upsets you. So when you discover that baseline of what exactly is upsetting you, whether it is your expectation of the situation, or that itself is very liberating. So you start dealing with those situations so much better. But like I was mentioning earlier, more often than not, we are expecting an outcome to a certain way and attaching an outcome, and in our head accepted that this is the best way forward. And when you start realizing these small things, this is like arsenal that you're preparing for your own wellness, and internally your own wellness, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever it is that you're seeking, is so important, because that is what is going to take you forward in life, right? In whatever situation, there will always be situations that will bother you. If you just sit and analyze why is something bothering you, you've discovered it once and you're discovering it the second time, that again is liberating. Then these sort of situations will not bother you anymore. Then you're on to newer challenges. And with any challenge, with any situation where you're forced to take a step back and assess the situation, I feel there's so much growth that comes out of it, and it is beautiful. That growth can be mental, emotional, whatever, any challenging situation. Maybe you felt the need to go pick up a book that you may have heard of or somebody may have recommended. You have new knowledge now, right? So or you may have picked up a podcast, or you may have picked up a new habit. You have grown in a way that you didn't anticipate, and you would not have otherwise if you were in a comfort zone, right? So when you talk about you playing it to your strengths, of course these are the strengths. And if you've done it once, it is a lot more empowering for you to discover it again the second time. So yeah, definitely it's a very very empowering journey moving forward. Yeah, of course there are setbacks, and I'm not saying you end up having answers to every situations, but you know the process of trying to find the answer for yourself. And no matter how uncomfortable that process may be, sometimes these processes are very, very painful, especially when you go through situations where you feel you may need to forgive somebody who's really, hurt you or abused you or whatever. Those are not easy situations to be in, right? Like sometimes we go through professional abuse, people take us for granted, and these are not easy situations to be in. But when you have discovered the root building block towards a situation, with respect to your reaction to the situation, I feel this itself is very empowering and liberating when you spend a little bit of time trying to understand why you feel what you feel in a certain situation. And even this approach itself, I feel, is a very, very strong approach and could be a very, very big strength to people wanting to find answers. That itself is such a huge, huge strength. Wanting to find answers and wanting to find why you're going through what you're going through, that is the only way that will propel you forward in life. We'll always have situations that disturb us, disrupt us, however small, however big. But what disrupts me may not disrupt you. And why is that? So these are things that we need to find from our own vantage point and perspective. And like you beautifully mentioned some time back, we all have vantage points. We go to a counselor, we go to a mentor, we go to a healer, or we go to a therapist. They're doing their best from their vantage point, but they're not in your own shoes, right? So eventually the goal should be for you to figure things out on your own.
That's rock solid gold coming out of a rock solid gold lady here. But there's one thing that's always there with you: discomfort, because you're out of your comfort zone. And the beauty of this journey is that the more you grow, the more empowered you are, the more liberated you are. You love to embrace the discomfort. You're fine with the discomfort, whether it's a bad relationship or a professional challenge or a sickness or a physical challenge or whatever it is. It could even be a sign that you have grown so much that this time the challenge is bigger, and that's why the discomfort is bigger.
Yeah, and when you are aiming towards something, that discomfort becomes pleasurable. Very small thing with related to fitness, right? Like every time you go to the gym, you're pushing yourself a little more. It's very uncomfortable, it's very painful, but you're doing it with a bigger purpose in mind, right? You endure it with a bigger purpose in mind. So having that bigger purpose and clarity of that bigger purpose is so important in whatever we may choose.
I have one final question on my mind. Now that we have talked so much about strengths, and you've already mentioned that weaknesses can also be used as strength and they're not bad. So the question on my mind is: are weaknesses hidden? Are they visible to us? Is it about us accepting or not accepting? Is it about people validating or not validating? Are those weaknesses visible or hidden?
Again, this is a very personal perspective. So if you talk about weaknesses within yourself or you talk about weaknesses that you're looking to see in other people, they're two very different perspectives. So I'll just speak about oneself, whether one should show their weaknesses out or whether one should conceal it. And I feel it's purely situational. Because I'll give you a very random example. Now when there is a hunter and you have a weak point, for example your leg is your weakest point, why would you expose that to a hunter and say, listen, this is my weakest point, right? So it's a very situational thing. And I feel weaknesses need not be shown out to everybody, and one can play on their strengths or weaknesses depending on the situation. Again, if you feel the need to display something out very strongly, then maybe that is a little bit of a toxic behavior, and one needs to address why you need that level of validation from people, where you need to display excessively, you need to display strengths or excessively need to display weaknesses. And how much is excess and how much is less is a decision that you yourself can make. And I think most of us have that level of judgment and control over oneself, or should have that level of judgment, where you're able to tell which situation is going toxic for you and which situation is well within your reach. Sometimes, of course, like in a professional setting, you need to speak about your strengths, you need to speak about what your work is about, what your skills are. That setting is completely different. When you're in an emotional setting, for example in a relationship, how vulnerable you choose to be or how much you choose to expose yourself is completely situational and very, very relative to the person that you're dealing with or to the person that you have an equation with. And I feel that is a judgment that we all should be making. There is no metric by which one can assess these situations. And but like I said, it all just boils down to awareness. When you have awareness over your own self, or you work towards it. I'm not saying awareness is something where you reach at a stage, but just simple awareness of how you are reacting to certain situations, just being a bit mindful. A lot of times we're all so clouded with thoughts, even when we're driving or anywhere else. We're just used to being consumed all the time, whether it's by radio, by phone, by social media, whatever it is, and it's becoming a lot worse. But if we just reverse and take a few steps back and try to keep awareness towards the situations that we are entering into or that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, you will know exactly where lines have to be drawn. You may make mistakes, which is great. It's fine. It's a learning curve. You move back. I'm not saying, these are situations where you are going with an arsenal and you're going to win every single time. It never works like that. But having said that, you're making progress. There needs to be some step that you're putting forward. Whether you put that step on a landmine, okay, fine. Then, you face the consequences, you face the brunt of it, you've learned a lesson. That lesson is invaluable because you wouldn't have learned it otherwise. Then you will put your second step with a lot more caution. That also is a lesson that you have learned. So it all boils down to practicing a little bit of mindfulness, practicing a little bit of awareness. And none of this is very complicated. It's just about being in your present situation. You're sitting on a seat. Try to feel like how soft this chair is. Try to feel what your surroundings are like. So these are things that one needs to be mindful of, and this is a practice of mindfulness. Just a little bit every day will just go a long way in contributing towards health and well-being of all of us as a society, and also on an individual level.
Thank you so much, Ankita, for those in-depth analysis and description of how strength and weaknesses are within us, and it is upon us to reach out to them, to discover them, and it's a never-ending journey. It's not like you've reached a place and that's where you've discovered this is my strength and this is my weakness. It's a growth. It's a growth chart. It's a progress that you continuously make. It's a journey. Very beautifully pointed out by you. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you
love
for
the
having
energy.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and sharing thoughts and sharing insights, and a lot of insights I didn't know existed inside of me. But thank you so much for having me.
You have been listening to Our Quest. Thank you for your time again. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating on Apple Podcast. And don't forget, you can follow us on Instagram or share your screenshot of the podcast and tag us. Links in description. See you next week, same time, same place.